Gunfire tore through the burning battlefield. A helicopter spiraled down, black smoke choking the sky. Amid the wreckage, a young mechanic worked silently on a shattered rotor blade, blood streaming from her shoulder, eyes steady as iron. When the SEAL Admiral approached with a tired grin and asked, "What's your call sign, kid?" she only whispered, "Iron Raven." The entire special operations team went silent. They recognized that name it belonged to a legend lost in the Khe-Sanh operation years ago, a ghost pilot the Pentagon had declared killed in action. But here she stood, wrench in hand, blood on her uniform, alive. The forward operating base shook under mortar fire. Sand whipped across the tarmac as another explosion rocked the perimeter. Admiral Ryan Steele pressed his radio against his ear, filtering out the chaos around him. 3 of his SEAL teams were pinned down 40 kilometers east, and the extraction window was closing fast. "Sir, we've lost 2 birds already," Lieutenant Commander Derek Walsh shouted over the roar of another incoming round. The backup Blackhawk took shrapnel to the tail rotor. "We're down to 1 operational aircraft." Ryan's jaw tightened. 1 helicopter couldn't extract 30 operators from a hot zone. The math was brutal and simple. He scanned the motor pool, where mechanics scrambled to salvage damaged equipment under fire. Most were ducking for cover. 1 wasn't. A woman in grease-stained fatigues worked beneath the damaged Blackhawk, her movements precise despite the explosions. She didn't flinch when debris rained down 10 meters away. Her focus was absolute, hands moving with the confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times in worse conditions. "Who's that?" Ryan asked. Walsh followed his gaze. "Quinn, Ava Quinn, contract mechanic. Keeps to herself. Best wrench we've got, though. She can rebuild a turbine blindfolded." Ryan watched her for another moment. Something about her economy of movement, the way she anticipated the aircraft's needs before diagnosing the problem, it reminded him of combat pilots he'd known. Elite ones. He crossed the tarmac as another mortar whistled overhead. Ava didn't look up. Her hands worked inside the engine, cowling, fingers following hydraulic lines with surgical precision. "How bad is it?" Ryan asked. "Fuel line compromised. Hydraulic reservoir cracked. Tail rotor assembly needs complete replacement." Her voice was flat, professional. 30 minutes if I have the parts, 45 if I have to improvise. "We don't have 30 minutes. Then you don't have a helicopter." She pulled her head out of the engine compartment, meeting his eyes for the first time. Hers were gray, cold as winter steel. "You want it fast or you want it right, Admiral." Ryan studied her. Mid-30s, maybe. Lean build, economy of motion. Scars on her hands that didn't come from turning wrenches. A certain hardness around the eyes that spoke of things seen and survived. "You former military? Does it matter?" She returned to the engine. "Maybe." Ryan keyed his radio. "Walsh, get Quinn whatever parts she needs. Strip the down birds if you have to." Ava's hands paused for a fraction of a second. "Smart. The port side Blackhawk still has an intact hydraulic system. I'll need 2 men and 20 minutes. You've got 15 and 1 man." She wiped oil from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a dark streak. "Then, stay out of my way, sir." Ryan found himself smiling despite the situation. He'd commanded Navy SEALs for 2 decades, worked with the best operators in the world. This mechanic had the same edge, that absolute confidence born from repeated exposure to chaos. The next 15 minutes were a blur of controlled urgency. Ava directed Walsh and a young corporal with the precision of a surgeon calling for instruments. She didn't waste words. Wrench, socket, line, clamp. Each tool appeared in her hand exactly when needed. Ryan watched her work, noting details. The way she tested each connection twice. How she tilted her head to listen to the engine's breathing. The small ritual she performed before closing the engine, cowling 3 taps on the turbine housing, like a benediction. "Fire her up," Ava said, stepping back. The Blackhawk's engine spooled to life, turbines winding up to operating speed. The rotor blades began their rotation, smooth and steady. Ava stood motionless, eyes closed, listening. Ryan saw her lips move, counting something. After 30 seconds, she opened her eyes and nodded. "You're good. She'll give you 6 hours of flight time before that temporary hydraulic fix needs attention. Don't push her past redline, and keep your altitude below 3,000 meters. The patch won't hold in thin air." "How do you know?" Ryan started. "Because I know." She picked up her toolkit. "Your boys are waiting, Admiral." The extraction mission launched 30 minutes later. Ryan rode in the crew compartment, watching the desert scroll past below. The mission was textbook fast insertion, secure the LZ, extract the teams. They'd done it 100 times. But textbook didn't account for the RPG that streaked out of a canyon wall. The pilot jerked the stick hard left. The Blackhawk rolled, narrowly avoiding the rocket. But the evasive maneuver pushed them straight into small arms fire from below. Rounds pinged off the fuselage. One punched through the crew compartment, inches from Ryan's head, taking fire. Multiple shooters. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. Ryan gripped his rifle, scanning the ground. This wasn't random. They'd flown into a prepared ambush. Someone knew their flight path. "We need to abort," the co-pilot shouted. "Negative," Ryan barked. "Those teams are depending on this bird. Push through." The Blackhawk shuddered as more rounds found their mark. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit. Ryan's stomach dropped as he recognized the pattern. They were losing hydraulic pressure. Ava's repair was failing. "We're leaking fluid fast," the pilot reported, voice tight. "I'm losing tail rotor authority." Ryan made the calculation instantly. They could try to push through to the extraction point and risk catastrophic failure over enemy territory, or they could turn back now and abandon 3 SEAL teams. "How long until total failure?" he demanded. "Minutes, maybe less." The helicopter lurched suddenly, nose yawing to the right as the pilot fought for control. Through the cockpit window, Ryan saw the FOB in the distance. They might make it. Barely. "Get us on the ground, now." The pilot coaxed the dying Blackhawk toward the base, fighting the controls every second. They came in hard and fast, rotors screaming. The landing was controlled crash, skids slamming into the tarmac hard enough to crack the cross tubes. Ryan was out before the rotors stopped spinning, sprinting toward the motor pool. He found Ava exactly where he'd left her, welding a support strut on another damaged bird. "We got hit," he said without preamble. "Your patch failed." Ava shut off the torch and lifted her welding mask. "Did you exceed 3,000 meters?" "No." "Push past red line RPM?" "No." "Then you got hit in the hydraulic line again, and you're blaming my work." She set down the torch. "Show me." They walked to the damaged Blackhawk. Ava climbed into the engine compartment, her movements efficient despite the growing dusk. Ryan watched her trace the hydraulic system, fingers following lines, checking connections. "Here." She pointed to a small hole, 7.62 round, straight through. "Missed your repair by 6 inches. Your patch is still good." She dropped down from the aircraft, meeting his eyes. "I don't do sloppy work, Admiral." Ryan felt heat rise in his face. He'd questioned her competence based on assumption, not evidence. In the teams, that kind of thinking got people killed. "My apologies," he said. "Can you fix it?" "Yes." "How long?" 2 hours. "Maybe 3. She grabbed her toolkit. "But you don't have 3 hours, do you?" "No." Ryan checked his watch. "I've got 35 men counting on an extraction that should have happened an hour ago. Every minute we delay, the window closes tighter." Ava was silent for a moment, her gray eyes distant. Then she looked past him, toward the airfield where 2 more Blackhawks sat, both damaged, both officially grounded. "The bird on pad 3, she said. "The one with the cracked main rotor mast. How bad did they rate the damage?" "Critical structural failure risk." Flight ops pulled her. Flight ops doesn't know what critical means. Ava started walking toward pad 3. "I spent 2 hours yesterday reinforcing that mast with a titanium sleeve. She'll fly." Flight ops says, flight ops can say whatever they want from their air-conditioned office. Ava spun to face him. "I'm the one who rebuilt that bird from scrap. I'm the one who tested every weld, every bolt, every stress point. She will fly." The absolute certainty in her voice made Ryan pause. This wasn't bravado. This was knowledge, bone deep and unshakable. "You willing to bet your life on that?" he asked. "I already did. Yesterday. Put 5 hours in the air testing her." Ava met his gaze. "The question is whether you trust me." "Admiral." Ryan made his decision. "Prep her. We launch in 20 minutes. 15. Ava corrected. "And I'm coming with you." "Negative. This is a combat operation, and if that mast fails mid-flight, you'll need someone who can jury-rig a solution before you slam into the ground." She stepped closer. "I don't take orders from you, Admiral. I'm a contractor. I fly with my birds or they don't fly at all." Ryan wanted to argue. Regulations, protocols, common sense, all of it said she shouldn't be on this mission. But he'd learned long ago that sometimes the rules had to bend. The teams needed this extraction. Ava knew this aircraft better than anyone. "Fine. but you follow my orders in the field. Fair enough. She turned toward the helicopter, then paused. You might want to brief your crew chief. Tell him to ignore the vibration in the tail section between 4,000 and 6,000 feet. It's normal for this bird. How do you know that? Ava didn't answer. She just climbed into the cockpit and started the pre-flight check. 20 minutes later, they were airborne. Ryan sat in the crew chief's position, watching Ava move through the cabin like she'd been born there. She checked weapons mounts, tested the winch, inspected attachment points, all without being asked. The pilot, Chief Warrant Officer Jake Brennan, kept glancing back at her with a mix of curiosity and concern. She knows her way around, sir, he said over the intercom. More than she lets on, Ryan agreed. They flew low and fast, skimming the desert floor to avoid radar. The sun was setting, painting the sand in shades of copper and gold, beautiful and deadly. Somewhere ahead, his teams were dug in and waiting. The ambush came without warning. Tracer rounds streaked through the twilight. The Blackhawk bucked as rounds hammered the fuselage. Brennan threw the helicopter into a hard evasive turn, pushing the limits of the aircraft's agility. Multiple shooters. 3 o'clock, the co-pilot shouted. Ryan returned fire through the open door, his rifle barking controlled bursts. Beside him, Ava had grabbed a spare M4 and was firing with practiced precision. Not spraying bullets, aiming, shooting like someone who'd done this before. The Blackhawk shuddered. A warning alarm screamed in the cockpit. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Brennan fought the controls. I'm losing her. Ryan's blood ran cold. Not again. Not twice in one day. Ava dropped her rifle and lunged toward the cockpit. Let me see the gauges. Who the hell? Brennan started. Show her, Ryan barked. Ava leaned over the center console, scanning the instruments. Her eyes moved with professional speed, reading, calculating, deciding. It's not the hydraulics, she said. You've got a severed control linkage. You're fighting metal that won't respond. She turned to Ryan. I can bypass it, but I need to access the tail section. In flight, that's impossible. No, it's dangerous. There's a difference. She was already moving, pulling tools from her kit. Keep her as steady as you can. I need 3 minutes. Before Ryan could stop her, Ava clipped a safety harness to the cargo tie down and climbed out onto the external ladder. The wind tore at her, the ground rushing past below at 120 knots. She didn't hesitate. Ryan hooked his own harness and followed her to the door, keeping watch. Ava moved along the exterior of the helicopter with impossible confidence, feet finding purchase on maintenance rungs most pilots didn't know existed. She reached the tail section and braced herself against the vertical stabilizer. Tools appeared in her hands. She worked by touch in the failing light, fingers tracing cables and control rods. A metallic snap echoed above the rotor wash. Ava's hand moved in a blur, catching a broken cable before it whipped away. She pulled a spare connector from her vest who carries spare parts into combat, and began splicing the cable. Brennan, she shouted into her radio. On my mark, test the left pedal, gentle pressure only. Copy. Mark. The helicopter's tail shifted slightly. Ava watched the cable tension, made a minute adjustment, and secured the connection with wire. Try full authority. Slow. The Blackhawk responded, tail coming back under control. Brennan's whoop of relief echoed through the intercom. Ava pulled herself back inside, face flushed from exertion and wind. She unclipped her harness and returned to her position like nothing had happened. Ryan stared at her. Where did you learn to do that? YouTube, she said flatly. Bullshit. She met his eyes for a long moment. Something passed between them, an understanding, an acknowledgement. What's your call sign, kid? Ryan asked. It was meant as a joke, a way to break the tension. Soldiers always had call signs, contractors didn't. Ava's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. Hardened. Iron Raven. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. In the cockpit, Brennan's hands jerked on the controls. The co-pilot turned around, face pale. Even through the intercom, Ryan could hear the sudden intake of breath. Iron Raven. The name belonged to a legend, a ghost story whispered in ready rooms and over beers. The pilot who'd flown impossible missions during the classified operations in Quezon. The aviator who'd pulled off maneuvers that rewrote tactical doctrine. The hero whose final mission had ended in fire and smoke, with no body recovered. Iron Raven. Killed in action. 8 years ago. Ryan's mind raced, connecting details he should have seen earlier, the way she moved in the aircraft, her knowledge of combat tactics, the scars on her hands not from wrenches, but from flight gloves and ejection sequences. You're dead, he said quietly. Yes. Ava Iron Raven checked her rifle. Very convenient, being dead. No paperwork. No politics. Just work. Why are you here? She was silent for a long moment, eyes distant. Because 35 of your men are about to die if we don't reach them in the next 10 minutes. And because I'm tired of being dead. Ryan wanted to ask more, needed to ask more. But the LZ was coming up fast, and there was no time. We finish this first, he said. Then you tell me everything. Ava nodded once. Deal. The extraction went clean. They hit the LZ hot, loaded 35 exhausted SEALs, and pulled out under fire. The Blackhawk took more hits, but Ava kept the bird flying through a combination of skill and what looked like dark magic with duct tape and wire. They made it back to base as full night fell. The SEALs stumbled out, grimy and grateful. Several stopped to look at Ava with something like awe in their eyes. Word had already spread. Iron Raven was alive. Ryan cornered her in the maintenance hangar an hour later. She was back under a helicopter. Of course, always working. We need to talk. No, we don't. She didn't look at him. You got your people out. I did my job. We're done. The hell we are. Ryan grabbed a rolling stool, and Saturday, 8 years ago, Captain Natalie Corvus flew her last mission. Call sign, Iron Raven. The Pentagon said she died when her F-18 was shot down over enemy territory during Operation Crimson Knife. They gave her a posthumous Medal of Honor. Ava's hands stilled, but there was never a body, Ryan continued. The crash site was too hot to investigate. The wreckage burned for 3 days, so they declared her Kaya and moved on. He leaned forward. Except she didn't die, did she? She survived. And for 8 years, she's been hiding in plain sight as a contractor mechanic named Ava Quinn. Silence. Why? Ryan asked simply. Ava pulled herself out from under the helicopter. Her face was streaked with grease and exhaustion. She grabbed a rag, wiping her hands with mechanical precision. You ever been betrayed by your own people, Admiral? The question hit Ryan harder than he expected. Once. Iraq, 2009. Someone in our chain of command was feeding intel to the enemy. Cost us 12 good men before we figured it out. Then you understand. Ava tossed the rag aside. I didn't crash. I was shot down. By an American missile. The words hung in the air like cordite smoke. That's impossible, Ryan said. The investigation was a lie. Ava's voice was flat, dead. I was flying cap during a Black Op extraction. 3 agency contractors and 2 Pentagon analysts, getting pulled out of a situation that had gone sideways. Someone wanted them dead. The easiest way to kill them was to shoot down their ride. So they shot down an F-18 with their own people aboard? They shot down an F-18 with expendable people aboard. A pilot who asked too many questions. Contractors with no family. Analysts who'd seen things they shouldn't have. Ava met his eyes. I saw the missile launch from our own position. I had 2 seconds to react. Not enough time to save the Osprey I was escorting. Just enough time to eject before my bird turned into shrapnel. Ryan felt cold despite the desert heat. And you survived. I survived. Landed in enemy territory with a broken leg and 3 cracked ribs. Took me 4 days to crawl to friendly lines. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. When I finally made contact, I found out I was already dead. Official Kia. Mission classified. Incident sealed under national security protocols. You could have exposed them. Gone to Congress, the media, with what proof? Ava shook her head. I was a ghost. My death was already official. Any accusation I made would have been dismissed as PTSD or worse. And the people who ordered that strike, they had 4-star friends and congressional backing. She met his eyes. So I stayed dead. Safer that way. For 8 years. For 8 years. Ava stood, grabbing her toolkit. I changed my name, got contractor credentials, and kept doing what I do best. Fixing things. Keeping birds in the air. Keeping pilots safe. Her voice dropped. Atonement, maybe. For not being fast enough to warn that Osprey. Ryan processed this. The pieces fit together with brutal clarity. A pilot with combat experience, disappearing into the contractor workforce. A mechanic with tactical knowledge she shouldn't have. A ghost hiding in plain sight, doing penance for a betrayal she couldn't prevent. What changed? He asked. Why reveal yourself now? Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled something from her pocket, a dog tag, worn and scratched. Captain Marcus Corvus, she read. My brother. Last known position, somewhere in the same AO where your teams were operating tonight. She looked up. He's the reason I took this contract, the reason I'm here. Intelligence chatter suggests he's still alive, held by the same group that's been hitting our convoys. And you think we can get him out? I think you're the only one who can. You've got the authority, the assets, the teams. Her gray eyes were hard as steel. And now you've got motivation. Because I know something about that missile that shot me down. I know who ordered it. I know why. Ryan leaned back, mind already racing through operational possibilities and political consequences. This is above my pay grade. No, Ava said quietly. This is exactly your pay grade. You're a SEAL Admiral. You're supposed to protect operators. Well, Marcus is an operator, and he's been rotting in a prison cell for 8 years because the same people who killed him on paper wanted him to disappear for real. If what you're saying is true, it's true, then we're not just talking about a rescue operation. We're talking about going up against people inside our own command structure. People with the power to erase inconvenient truths. Ryan stood. Do you understand what you're asking me to risk? Yes. Ava met his gaze without flinching. Your career, your reputation, maybe your freedom. I understand, Admiral. I lost all of those things 8 years ago. She stepped closer. But I'm not asking you to do this for me. I'm asking you to do it because it's right. Because Marcus and those contractors deserved better than being erased to cover someone's political ambitions. Because if we don't stand up for our own people, who will? Ryan held her gaze. In 2 decades of leading elite operators, he'd learned to read people. Ava Natalie Iron Raven wasn't lying. Every word carried the weight of truth bought with blood and years. I need proof, he said finally. Something concrete. If we're going to move against people with that kind of power, I need ammunition. Ava pulled out a data drive. Flight recorder from my F-18. I went back for it after. Took me 6 months to recover it from the crash site. It's got everything. The missile telemetry, the IFF squawk showing it was friendly fire. Voice comms showing I tried to warn the Osprey. She held it out. It's been my insurance policy for 8 years. Now it's yours. Ryan took the drive, feeling its weight. Such a small thing to hold such enormous consequences. Give me 48 hours, he said. I need to verify this. Call in some favors with people I trust. If it checks out, when it checks out, Ryan amended, we'll put together an operation. Off book, tight crew. People who understand that some missions don't make it into the history books. Thank you. The words came out rough, like Ava wasn't used to saying them. Don't thank me yet. This could end with both of us in Leavenworth. Ryan pocketed the drive. But you're right, we don't leave our people behind, even if it takes 8 years to bring them home. Ryan spent the next 2 days in a secure comm center, burning through encrypted channels and calling in every favor he'd accumulated over 20 years. The flight recorder data checked out disturbingly so. The telemetry was irrefutable. The missile that killed Iron Raven's F-18 had been fired from a US Navy destroyer, with proper IFF identification active. Someone had ordered friendly fire on an American pilot and her charges. Someone with enough juice to bury the evidence and seal the records. The name that kept appearing was Major General Robert Briggs, now retired. But during Operation Crimson Knife, he'd been the theater operations commander. A Pentagon darling with political ambitions and a spotless record. Too spotless. Ryan dug deeper, using back channels and old friendships. What he found made his blood boil. Briggs had been running an illegal arms deal through intermediaries, using classified operation funds. The contractors and analysts on that Osprey had stumbled onto evidence. Iron Raven had been asking questions about mission parameters that didn't add up. So Briggs had eliminated the problem. 1 missile, 5 bodies, all blamed on enemy action. Clean and untraceable. Except Iron Raven had survived. And her brother Marcus, a Green Beret embedded with local forces, had also found threads of the operation. So Briggs had arranged for him to be captured during a raid gone wrong, declared MIA, eventually KIA. Another loose end tied up. Only Marcus hadn't died. Intelligence suggested he was being held by a warlord with connections to Briggs' old network insurance, probably, or leverage. Kept alive, but off the books. A ghost like his sister. Ryan assembled his team carefully. Lieutenant Commander Derek Walsh, who'd served with him for 15 years. Master Chief Brad Keller, who'd been on more Black Ops than he could count. 6 other SEALs, each handpicked for skills and, more importantly, for loyalty and discretion, and Ava, because they'd need Iron Raven before this was done. They met in a secure planning room, maps of the target area spread across the table. The compound was deep in hostile territory, a converted Soviet-era military base now used by Abu Mazen, a regional warlord with a taste for Western hostages and profitable side businesses. 3 buildings of interest, Walsh briefed, pointing to satellite imagery. Main structure here, guard barracks here, and a bunker entrance here. Intel suggests high-value prisoners are kept in the bunker. It's basically a reinforced cave system with steel doors. Approach? Ryan asked. Only one that makes sense is aerial insertion. Here. Walsh indicated a ridgeline 2 kilometers from the compound. Low and fast. Stay under their radar coverage. Insert before dawn. Hit them while they're still waking up. And extraction? That's where it gets complicated. Walsh grimaced. We'd normally pull out the same way we came in, but if we're carrying injured personnel or if the op goes loud early, we'll need a backup plan. Ava stepped forward, studying the map. Her finger traced the terrain. There's a dry riverbed here, running northwest. Wide enough and flat enough for a helicopter to follow terrain mask. How do you know that? Keller asked. Because I've flown over this region 100 times. Ava met his skeptical look. Before I was dead, I mapped most of this terrain for JSOC. That riverbed is 40 meters wide at its narrowest point, plenty of room for a Blackhawk if your pilot's got nerve. Your pilot meaning you, Ryan said. Unless you've got someone better who knows this terrain in the dark. Ava crossed her arms. I'll fly the extraction bird. You want Marcus out alive. You need someone who can thread that riverbed at 200 knots with zero margin for error. The SEALs exchanged glances. Flying with a contractor, especially one who'd been dead for 8 years, wasn't standard operating procedure. But then, nothing about this mission was standard. I'm in, Walsh said. I've seen what she can do. If Iron Raven says she can fly it, I believe her. One by one, the others nodded. Ryan turned to Ava. You understand the risks. This goes sideways. There's no official rescue coming. We're ghosts on this op. Admiral, Ava said quietly, I've been a ghost for 8 years. At least this time, I'll be a ghost doing something that matters. All right. Ryan looked around the table. We launch at 0200. Wheels up in 6 hours. Use the time to prep gear, check weapons, and get what rest you can. This is going to be a long night. The team dispersed, leaving Ryan and Ava alone with the maps. You don't have to do this, Ryan said. I could bring in another pilot. No, you couldn't. Not for this. Ava studied the terrain imagery. Besides, Marcus is my brother. My responsibility. I should have found him years ago, but I was too busy hiding, too scared of making waves. She looked up. I'm done being scared. Fear's not a weakness, Ryan said. It's what keeps us alive. Maybe. Ava rolled up the maps. But sometimes being alive isn't enough. Sometimes you have to actually live. The Blackhawk cut through the darkness, flying 50 feet above the desert floor. No lights, no radio chatter. Just the muffled thunder of rotors and the hum of turbines pushing them toward the objective. Ava sat in the pilot's seat, hands light on the controls. Beside her, Chief Warrant Officer Jake Brennan, the only official pilot Ryan could convince to bend the rules, watched her fly with growing respect. You're good, he said over the intercom. I'm adequate, Ava replied, eyes never leaving the terrain ahead. Good pilots follow the rules. Great pilots know when to break them. In the cargo bay, Ryan and his team ran final checks. Weapons, comms, breaching charges, everything they'd need for a surgical strike. The plan was simple. Insert 2 clicks out, approach on foot, breach the compound, secure Marcus, and extract before the enemy could organize a response. Simple plans were usually the best ones. They were also the first to fall apart. 2 minutes to LZ, Ava announced. The SEALs stood, snapping carabiners to the fast rope. Ryan checked his rifle one last time, then moved to the door. Below, the desert was a study in shadows and starlight. Ava brought the Blackhawk into a hover. The aircraft rocked steady despite the swirling wind. Ropes away. Walsh kicked out the fast rope. The SEALs descended in rapid succession, boots hitting sand within seconds. Ryan went last, sliding down with practiced ease. His boots touched ground and he released, moving away from the rotor wash. The Blackhawk climbed away immediately, disappearing into the darkness. It would orbit 15 kilometers out, ready to respond to the extraction call. Move, Ryan whispered into his radio. The team moved like ghosts across the desert. night vision turning the darkness into shades of green. They covered the 2 kilometers in 20 minutes, approaching the compound from the northeast, the blind spot in the sentry rotation Walsh had identified. The compound loomed ahead, walls of crumbling concrete topped with razor wire, guard towers at 3 corners, each with a board sentry more interested in his phone than the perimeter. "Keller, Walsh Towers 1 and 3, Ryan ordered. Suppressed only. On my mark." 2 soft PFT sounds. Both sentries dropped without a sound. The team was already moving. They breached the wall using a pre-positioned ladder, flowing over the obstacle in seconds. Inside the compound, shadows danced as wind stirred tarps and debris. A generator hummed somewhere in the darkness. "Bunker entrance, northeast corner," Walsh whispered. They found the steel door exactly where intelligence had placed it. Heavy, Soviet-era construction. Built to withstand artillery. Ryan placed the breaching charge while Keller covered the approach. The rest of the team set up a defensive perimeter. "Charge set," Ryan whispered. "Everyone get." Gunfire erupted from the main building. They'd been spotted. "Blow it," Ryan shouted. The breaching charge detonated, tearing the door from its frame. The team poured through, weapons up. A guard appeared in the tunnel mouth. Walsh dropped him with a 3-round burst. "Contact rear," someone shouted from outside. The compound was coming alive. More gunfire, this time from multiple positions. So much for surgical. "Push forward," Ryan commanded. "Find Marcus and get him out." They moved deeper into the bunker, a nightmare of concrete corridors and steel doors. Each room had to be cleared, each corner checked. Minutes were bleeding away, and every second gave the enemy more time to organize. "Here," Keller kicked open a heavy door. Inside, chained to a wall, barely recognizable under bruises and malnutrition, was Captain Marcus Corvus, alive. "Marcus," Ryan said, moving to him. "Your sister sent us." Marcus looked up with hollowed eyes. "Natalie's dead. She's very much alive. And she's flying our extraction." Ryan cut the chains while Walsh checked Marcus for injuries. "Can you walk?" "Can I run?" Marcus said, then coughed. "Because I think we're about to need to run." An explosion shook the bunker. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're trying to bring the entrance down," Walsh said. "Cut us off. Then we go up." Ava's voice crackled over the radio, calm as ever. "Northeast corner of the compound. There's a weak point in the wall. Blow it and get into the open. I'm 2 minutes out." "Copy," Ryan replied. "You heard her move." They hauled Marcus up, supporting his weight. The team fought their way back through the bunker as enemy fighters poured into the compound. It was chaos, gunfire echoing off concrete, smoke and dust choking the air. They emerged from the bunker into hell. The compound was fully alert now, fighters taking positions behind cover. Tracers cut through the darkness. An RPG streaked overhead, exploding against the barracks. "Northeast wall," Ryan pointed. Keller sprinted ahead, slapping a charge against the concrete. The team took cover behind a burned-out truck. The charge blew. The wall section collapsed outward, creating an exit. And then Ryan heard it, the distinctive whop 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 of rotor blades, getting louder fast. "Incoming bird," someone shouted. The Blackhawk appeared over the ridgeline like an avenging angel, flying faster and lower than Ryan would have believed possible. Ava brought the helicopter in at a steep angle, flaring hard at the last second. The skids kissed ground inside the compound, right next to their position. "Let's go," Brennan shouted from the co-pilot's seat. The team ran for the helicopter, half-dragging Marcus. Enemy fire intensified, rounds pinging off the Blackhawk's armored skin. Ryan returned fire as his team loaded up, dropping targets with mechanical precision. Walsh was last through the door. "Everyone's aboard." "Punch it," Ryan shouted. Ava pulled pitch, the Blackhawk clawing for altitude. An RPG streaked past, missing by meters. More gunfire rattled against the fuselage. And then one of the turbines began to scream. "Engine 2's hit." Brennan's voice was tight, temperature spiking. "Shutting it down," Ava said, her hands moving across controls with inhuman speed. The screaming turbine wound down, switching to single-engine flight. "We're too heavy," Brennan protested. "We'll never make it over the ridgeline." "Watch me," Ava said. She pushed the Blackhawk into a dive, trading altitude for speed. The helicopter accelerated toward the ground, Ryan's stomach lurching. They were going to crash. They had to be going to crash. At the last possible second, Ava pulled back on the cyclic. The Blackhawk's nose came up, trading speed for altitude in a perfectly calculated energy transfer. They shot over the ridgeline with perhaps 10 feet of clearance, the remaining engine howling at maximum power. Then Ava nosed down again, letting the helicopter descend into the riverbed she'd identified. The walls rose on either side, hemming them in. Ava flew the terrain like she'd been born in the cockpit, threading the needle between rock walls at 200 knots. How is she doing this? One of the SEALs breathed. Iron Raven, Walsh said simply, watching Ava fly. That's how. Behind them, the compound fell away. They'd made it, but they weren't safe yet. The Blackhawk was flying on one engine, damaged and leaking fuel. And they still had 50 kilometers of hostile territory to cross before reaching friendly lines. Ava checked her instruments, her face illuminated by instrument glow. We've got maybe 40 minutes of flight time left. After that, we're gliding. Can we make it to the FOB? Ryan asked. No. Ava adjusted course slightly, following the terrain. But I know a place. Old desert airstrip from the Soviet era, abandoned. It's 30 kilometers out, right on our fuel margin. And if the strip's compromised? Ava glanced back at him, and for a moment Ryan saw not the quiet mechanic but the legendary pilot Iron Raven in all her glory. Then I land this bird anyway, she said. I don't leave my people behind. The fuel gauge hit empty 20 kilometers from the abandoned airstrip. The engine coughed once, twice, then ran smooth again on vapors and prayers. Come on, baby, Ava murmured to the Blackhawk, coaxing every last ounce of performance from the dying aircraft. Just a little further. The airstrip appeared out of the darkness, a long ribbon of cracked concrete, overgrown with desert scrub. Soviet-era hangars stood like tombstones on either side. I see it, Brennan confirmed. Looks clear. Ava circled once, checking for threats. Nothing moved, just wind and sand and the ghosts of Cold War ambitions. The engine coughed again, this time not recovering. The turbine wound down with a terminal whine. We're done, Ava said calmly. Auto-rotation landing. Everyone brace. The Blackhawk dropped, no longer flying so much as falling with style. Ava controlled the descent with pure skill, managing rotor pitch to bleed off airspeed. The ground rushed up, concrete filling the windscreen. Impact. The skids hit hard, bouncing once. The helicopter settled with a groan of stressed metal. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Ryan realized he was still breathing. Sound off, he ordered. One by one, his team reported in. All alive, all functional. They'd made it. Ryan turned to Ava. She sat slumped in the pilot's seat, hands still on the controls, breathing hard. Blood stained her shoulder. She'd taken around during the extraction and hadn't mentioned it. You're hit, Ryan said. Later. Ava unbuckled and stood, swaying slightly. She moved to the cargo bay where Marcus lay, supported by Walsh and Keller. For a long moment, the siblings just stared at each other. 8 years. 8 years of thinking the other was dead. Nat? Marcus' voice cracked. Hey, little brother. Ava knelt beside him, and for the first time since Ryan had known her, tears streaked through the grease and blood on her face. Sorry I'm late. Marcus laughed, then coughed. You always did have lousy timing. They held each other, and Ryan looked away, giving them privacy. Around the broken helicopter, his team set up a defensive perimeter. They'd radioed their position to friendly forces, but it would be hours before extraction arrived. Until then, they were on their own in hostile territory. Ryan checked his secure radio, scrolling through encrypted messages. One caught his eye, a high-priority alert from JSOC. General Briggs had been arrested. The flight recorder data had done its job. Combined with Marcus's testimony and corroborating evidence Ryan had gathered, JAG had moved fast. Briggs was in custody, facing charges of murder, conspiracy, and treason. His entire network was being rolled up. It's done, Ryan said, showing Ava the message. She read it, her gray eyes unreadable. Good. More than good. You're cleared. Both of you, Ryan smiled. Captain Natalie Corvus is officially no longer KIA. You're being reinstated with full honors and back pay. There's even talk of a promotion. Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked out at the desert, where the first hints of dawn were painting the horizon. What if I don't want to be reinstated? The question caught Ryan off guard. You fought for 8 years to clear your name. Why wouldn't you want it back? Because Iron Raven was someone else. Someone who believed in the system, who trusted the chain of command. Ava met his eyes. That person died when the missile hit. What crawled out of that wreckage was someone different. Someone who understands that sometimes the rules are there to protect the wrong people. So what do you want? Ava smiled faintly. I want to keep fixing things, keep flying. Maybe work with a team that understands mission comes first, politics come last. She gestured at the SEALs. Think you've got room for one more on your crew? Ryan considered. The regulations said no. The practical reality said they needed someone exactly like her. I think we can work something out, he said. Welcome to the team, Iron Raven. 6 months later, Ryan stood on the tarmac at Naval Base Coronado, watching a modified Blackhawk perform a training exercise. The pilot put the helicopter through maneuvers that defied physics, rolling inverted, flying backward, threading between obstacles with inches of clearance. The gathered SEAL candidates watched in awe. So did most of the instructors. The Blackhawk settled onto the pad with textbook precision. The pilot shut down the engines and climbed out, removing her helmet. Commander Natalie Iron Raven Corvus, newly assigned as SEAL Aviation Training Officer, grinned at the stunned candidates. That, she announced, is what you're going to learn to do. Questions? 3 dozen hands shot up. Ryan smiled and walked toward his office. He had a mission brief to prepare another off-book operation, another impossible task. The kind of mission that needed the best. The kind of mission that needed Iron Raven. Behind him, Ava's voice carried across the tarmac. First lesson: fear is a tool. Use it, don't let it use you. Second lesson: trust your bird and she'll bring you home. Third lesson: legends don't die. They just change call sign. Ryan paused, looking back. The sun glinted off the Blackhawk's rotors, painting streaks of gold across the sky. For a moment, he could almost see a raven silhouette in the light iron wings spread wide, ready to fly. Some stories ended with closure and peace. Others ended with new beginnings. This was both. Iron Raven had risen from the dead, and she was just getting started.